Peasant Productions presents The Math of ESP. Why it works, even if you don't believe in it. Gonna have, again, it is trying to be playful. This is day 23. Like I said, 23 is one of those numbers that is so constant in its variations in my life that it is, a hilarious joke. I mean, okay, hey, let's have a 23 party just because today's the 23rd. On the other hand, some of what I want to talk about is the opposite side of that, which is what's going on. First of all, yeah, the finger's still doing fine. The glossiness of it, I have my coconut oil, olive oil, and ginger mix on it. It increases the flexibility. It's helping the skin fill in that hole in there. You can see, and again, I don't really know how the light's working, and I don't have my camera on autofocus ever, almost ever, so it's a lot easier for me to just have it manually there so I can walk around. But I'm doing fine, no real problem, everything's progressing. This finger is still obviously tweaked, and I can kind of feel how it's sitting just kind of one side. It's not the bone itself are in line, but there's a patch over here which would be like the cartilage area that the actual knuckle actuation would be with. Something I want to bring up that is something that is almost never discussed in understanding about nuclear power plants, nuclear power facilities and such, is that they have a cooling pond in which they store material after it's been used in their power, nuclear core, to make the heat, and whether it is liquid sodium or it's just water or various things of this sort, which there's different fluids and stuff. Just like a car, you put antifreeze, it holds the heat better and doesn't boil over. The thing is that the core itself, the nuclear fuel, even when it is waste, when you shut down a nuclear pile, and I learned this in 1974 actually, when you shut down a nuclear pile, it takes anywhere from 14 to 20, 21 days to cool off enough anything can really get near it, because up until that point in time, it has been somewhere around 5,000 degrees, which means all your robots just melt down. Fukushima, they went in with robots. The robots could only last an hour because the radiation was so hot they were literally melting down in the walkways and stuff they're going, not actually, in various areas like that. Part of the reason for this is when you take that nuclear fuel out as waste, you have to transport it over and put it into a cooling facility pond. And it must sit in those cooling facilities for about 10 to 15 years before it is cold enough for you to put it in any kind of glass, steel barrels, cement barrels, drums, anything of this sort, okay? Up until that point in time, it will just simply break anything down very, very quickly. After 10 to 15 years of sitting there in a cooling bath, you can put it into a steel barrel and it'll last about 25, maybe 30 years before it starts dissolving all that material. But needless to say, there is an awful lot of material. So the average nuclear facility, power plants, and think about how many hundreds they are, okay? I mean, just right down in the Midwest, Southeast is getting a lot of flooding right now. And they showed that there was an earthquake in Tennessee, and somebody called up the map in one of the reports that I was looking into, and there was not one, but about 6 nuclear power plants around there. Now, each of those nuclear power plants, because you cannot transport that material off-site, it is in the cooling ponds, and it is there for 10 to 15 years, which means you have to have capacity in that pond for 20 to 30 years worth of fuel used up in your reactor. A year's consumption of fuel. It doesn't matter whether it's a kilo or 1,000 kilos, you have to be able to have a cooling pond that holds either, 30 kilos worth of fuel or 30,000 kilos of fuel. You must have that on site. In 2002, 2003, I was doing some research that showed that right now every power plant, nuclear power plant in the United States has between 300% and 400% of normal capacity in their cooling ponds at this time. 15 years ago, folks, yeah. So you see what the problem is. Fukushima, everybody's hollering about, oh, there were just 4 reactors, no big deal. But you also had 4 cooling ponds that nobody's discussing that were actually located on the 4th floor of each of those buildings, which means the earthquake alone shattered and ruptured that stuff. The tsunami wiped out stuff. And the hydrogen gas explosions of the nuclear piles in the reactors exploding, which took out, I believe, 2 or 3 of the buildings, means that you have who knows how many hundreds of tons of fuel all over the ground that is hot for 10, 20, 30 years. And nobody's talking about it. Yeah, why? Because they have no answer for that. So now do you understand why this is such an important problem? Europe has power plants. America has power plants. Australia, China, Russia, Africa, I think probably has a couple of them down there. Pakistan, India. And they are all going to be way too full. And you have earth changes going on, which is shifting and twisting and bending everything. You have no answer for the problems you have. And like I said, the more you add radiation to the mix, the higher your mutation rate goes. You have no fix. You have no issue. You have no way of stopping it. You have no way of cleaning it up, because what do? You take it and you bury it in a hole, which means you're putting it right back in the earth, aren't you? So you have no solution for what you've done, and then you add all of the GMOs, the SO2s, all the various chemical pollutants in all those various ways, all the little bits and pieces of microplastic and all of that, and ooh, wow, it really starts getting nasty. Now, all of a sudden, you start to understand why, if a government GDP, gross domestic product, or as I like to say, greed demands profit. If their whole thing is about having the best GDP numbers and being at the top of the list, A number 1, what's Trump? He's very arrogant. He likes to be, he outright brags that he's the absolute best and most beautiful. And some of the stuff I see is not even worth looking to see if he actually said it or somebody's just picking on him, because so much of what I've actually seen of him doing is so obvious the guy's a buffoon. But he's totally arrogant, so he totally thinks he's totally in love with himself, he's totally narcissistic of himself. And all countries tend to be narcissistic too. Oh, our country is better than your country, don't they? All religions. Our religion, our God is better than your God. Yeah. You have an issue. You don't learn to say I'm sorry, you don't learn to go back and fact check, and you definitely don't learn to change your mind and accept fact over fantasy. So, as I say, as a 23 day, it's kind of amusing to see this. It definitely plays into free will, because sheep people have the right to wake up and think about waking up. You have the ability to stand out there and do something different. And at the same point in time, it's quite easy to just go with the flow, which at this point in time is a very serious, you're in a problem, something's going to give. It's like I was joking about in talking about my Starship idea and dream and belief and energy I'm putting into that. Why shouldn't I? But my sun cells on those things, I didn't want that. The crystals are breaking up, Captain. from Scotty's stuff. So, I'm always looking at the whole thing. And, right now I'm in a physical body, folks. Yes, I'm going to die just as easily as all of you. Okay? Let's get that straight. I'm not bigger than a God. I'm not greater than a God. I do have an issue with the gods because they kind of did that White Horseman of the Apocalypse thing, which actually makes me a part of the Bible. And I'm sitting there going, hey dudes, look, I got thrown out of the Christian church, Catholic church system at 3 years of age. That nun and those couple of priests were very, straightforward to me. And from the conversation I heard from my stepdad as we were driving home, where he was discussing the fact that, the kids, they say never, ever, 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 ever. And I was told in my face by these priests, never come back, kid. We don't like your kind here. Okay? Because I had directly asked them about why they don't do what the Christ entity wants, and then I had supplied the correct answers for knowing what the Christ entity is. So, there's that issue that in 1961, I walked out the door and said, hey, never again. I have nothing to do with Bibles. I have nothing to do with the Bible religion. And to stick me with that Blanco Caballero, it's like, hey, dudes, this is straight out of the frickin' Bible. But you're saying 1911, and I can't argue against it, to a certain extent I fit that, because as a human being, I have been an investigative journalist. I've kept my mouth shut, followed the truth for a lot of years. I'm now talking about all my various stories and things that I know of. I've stuck myself out all the way to actually getting in an argument with the gods that, no, my evidence shows this, and you're trying to say this. And here we are 3 years later, and my evidence shows that I'm correct, not what you were kind of obviously telling me was a lie. Like I said, in the spiritual realm, when you lie, there's an energy instantly visible, and I could see that whatever it was. And while I am used to being told, we can't tell you that, you have to go investigate it, I wasn't ready for the direct argument of, no, stay in there and keep fighting because we need you to do so. In that challenge, because I stuck to truth and not because I stuck to anything else. And it transpired over a little over 3 years here now too. That they can lay it on me, and I can look at that passage and lay an awful lot of it on me myself. And it doesn't quite say I am a part of that Bible, but because it is a named thing out of it and a named action, it's a little argument for me and the gods, okay? But needless to say, I'm adjusting, I'm adapting, I'm working with what's going on. Even though it grates my most basic being, because in 1960 I took a vow of never belonging to a religion. 1961, thrown out of the church, fine. Hey, boss, never, ever, ever Christian, Catholic, Bible, religion, any of the four that are connected to that. I'm never a part of any of those. I will never join them. Okay, fine, we accept. Okay, so, yeah. But needless to say, life goes on, and it's a 23-day. There's a little thing for you to think about when you are seeing all of these government things about how, everything's fine, and in your location you're having some kind of problem with the severe weather and the flooding. I mean, there's 4, 5, 6 states that have been so, Florida to Maine right now is getting drenched for the umpteenth time. Maybe it's about time we looked at some real facts instead of some politically correct BS. Okay? Happy 23 day.